Honoka is an ordinary high school student with no special talents or popularity. He rides the same bus as Ayaka, the most admired girl in school, and sits next to her in class. Despite their closeness in seating, they have never spoken. Students crowd around Ayaka constantly, while Honoka goes through his days almost invisible to everyone around him. One afternoon, Honoka drops his eraser. Ayaka picks it up and hands it back. That small gesture is enough to draw attention. After class, members of Ayaka's fan club drag him outside, shove him to the ground, and beat him. They warn him never to make Ayaka do anything for him again. Later, while on day duty, Honoka carries papers toward the teacher's office. A girl approaches and takes the papers from his hands. She is not being kind. She is one of Ayaka's admirers, and since Ayaka is also on day duty, the girl wants to keep Honoka away from her. His school life continues like this, always pushed to the edges of a world that revolves around Ayaka. One evening after class, Honoka heads out to take the trash to the collection area. He notices a strange rabbit-shaped toy sticking out of the garbage can. He pulls it free and finds a note attached to its belly. The message reads that the weather is clear, but some school buildings may fall. He stares at the odd warning. A large shadow spreads across the ground beneath his feet. He looks up and sees the school clock tower breaking apart and collapsing directly toward him. The structure crashes down on top of him. Honoka opens his eyes in Ayaka's arms. She wears an unfamiliar outfit that resembles a witch's uniform. They float high above the rubble on a broomstick. She tells him to stay still or he will fall. Below, the wreckage of the clock tower spreads across the courtyard. In the distance, a girl with cat ears watches them. She snaps her fingers, and two large armored rabbit soldiers materialize. Ayaka throws Honoka upward, leaps back to dodge the soldiers' sword strikes, and sets both of them ablaze with a fire spell. She lands on her feet and catches Honoka before he hits the ground. The rabbit soldiers rise from the flames and charge again. Ayaka deflects their attacks with fireballs and strikes them with her broom at close range. She tells Honoka to stay near her. Instead, he spots the cat-eared girl waving at him from behind a building, beckoning him to come over. Believing she might be an ally, he runs toward her. He rounds the corner and finds himself surrounded by a full squad of rabbit soldiers. They seize his arms and force him to his knees. One soldier steps forward with an axe raised over his head. Ayaka arrives and sets every soldier ablaze, freeing him. She warns him to remain closer this time. Honoka notices that a strand of her hair has been singed. He realizes that his carelessness caused her to get hurt. While he processes this, one of the rabbit soldiers rises behind Ayaka and lunges at her. Honoka throws himself between them and takes the blow, falling unconscious. Ayaka holds him gently. Anger crosses her face. She stands and activates her strongest spell, Million Clover. A massive wave of fire erupts outward and incinerates every remaining soldier. The flames earn her a reputation as the Fire Witch. Honoka wakes in a quiet room inside the school. Ayaka sits nearby and tells him this is her private room. She confirms that none of what happened was a dream. She explains that it is her duty to protect him because he is her master. She calls him her princess. Honoka is confused by the word, but Ayaka offers no further explanation. They walk home together in silence. The next morning, Ayaka boards the bus and sits down beside Honoka. They walk into class together. Every student in the room stares. The attention feels hostile. Honoka excuses himself, claiming he needs to use the restroom. In the hallway, members of the fan club grab him by the collar. They threaten him and tell him to stay away from Ayaka. Before they can do anything more, Ayaka appears. She orders them to release him, straightens the bow on his tie, and announces that she will burn anyone who harms him again. At lunch, Ayaka sits with Honoka and feeds him food she prepared herself. Several girls from her fan club sit around them, their displeasure visible. Honoka feels unwelcome. He stands, says he will eat alone, and leaves. Ayaka watches him go. She sets the lunches around her on fire while staring at the table. Honoka wanders to the courtyard where the clock tower collapsed. The area looks completely undamaged. The cat-eared girl appears beside him. She tells him the falling building was an illusion. After confirming that he possesses no powers, she transforms into her witch gear and introduces herself as Tampopo of the Tower Witches. She declares her intent to take him and summons a massive army of rabbit soldiers. Ayaka arrives and pulls Honoka close. The soldiers charge from all directions, running Ayaka through with spears and blades. When Honoka opens his eyes, Ayaka kneels over him, her body pierced in countless places. She asks if he is safe. He tells her he believes in her and begs her to let him call for help. She tells him she is made of fire and asks him to close his eyes. A burst of flames erupts from Ayaka's body. Every soldier is blown away and reduced to ash. She advances on Tampopo and fires a powerful blast, but Tampopo calls her remaining soldiers as shields and barely escapes. Ayaka tells Honoka to open his eyes. The courtyard stands clean and undamaged once more. They walk home together without another word. The following morning, the teacher announces 5 new transfer students. Among them is Tampopo, joined by 4 other girls. Ayaka leans toward Honoka and confirms what he already suspects. All 5 of them are witches, and often brought destruction. Honoka rode the morning bus alone. Ayaka was not in her usual seat. He changed his shoes at the entrance and walked through the hallway, but instead of reaching his classroom, he ended up in front of a room labeled Torture Society Club. Inside, Ayaka stood over the 5 transfer students. All of them were bound and gagged. She explained that she had cast a spell on him so he would walk here instead of class and that this was a witch hunt. She decided to eliminate the tower witches before they could threaten him again. One of them had escaped her earlier, so she kept the others as bait to draw out the last member. Honoka asked her to remove the gags so they could speak. Ayaka loosened the bindings around their mouths. Tanpopo told him that Ayaka had not shared the truth with him. She said the tower witches were after something inside his body. Honoka turned red at the phrasing, but Ayaka told him not to trust anything his enemy said. Tanpopo warned them not to relax, since their group still had one member unaccounted for. Dark liquid began dripping from the ceiling. It spread quickly and engulfed the room. May emerged from the black substance, freed her 4 companions, and grabbed Honoka. She sank through the floor with him into the room below, leaving the others behind to face Ayaka. May set Honoka down and celebrated her escape. His body would not move. She had already cast a paralysis spell on him. Above, fire burst through the floor. Ayaka dropped down into the lower room. Behind her, the 4 tower witches lay defeated on the ground. She began walking toward May without hesitation. May pulled Honoka up as a shield. A small wolf creature sat on her shoulder. She warned Ayaka to stop or the wolf would bite through his neck. Ayaka did not slow down. She told Honoka not to worry and said she would finish this quickly. May ordered the wolf to bite. Its teeth sank into Honoka's neck, but flames erupted from his body and sent him rolling free. The bite wound was gone from his skin. Instead, the same wound appeared on Ayaka's neck, then faded before it could burn through. May stared in shock. She called for a retreat, and the tower witches vanished from the room. That afternoon, Honoka opened his eyes in Ayaka's private room at school. His neck showed no injury at all. Ayaka sat nearby with a thick scarf wrapped around her neck. She told him it was for the cold weather, though the air outside was warm. She apologized and said she had wanted him to live a normal life, but the tower witches would keep coming. To end the attacks, they needed to find and defeat the person behind them. She admitted she did not yet know who that person was. Honoka looked at the scarf hiding her wound. He understood that she had taken the injury meant for him. He asked her to tell him everything and to accept him as her apprentice. He did not want her fighting alone anymore. Ayaka considered his request, but said it was still too early to reveal everything. Elsewhere, inside a quiet dessert shop, the school headmistress Kazane sat across from an old acquaintance named Crom Noir. They had not met in over 100 years. Crom Noir mentioned that students from a witch named Medusa had started trouble and suggested Kazane might want to get involved. That weekend, Honoka received a call from Ayaka asking him to meet her outside. They walked together through the streets, and she began explaining. 2 kinds of witches existed in their world. Workshop witches served as protectors. They built workshops in places where people gathered, formed cities around them, and made sure magic was never used to cause harm. Tower witches followed no such rules. They used magic for selfish purposes. Ayaka told him that if the tower witches obtained what was sealed inside him, the world would fall into ruin. They stopped at a food shop to eat. A waitress approached their table and spoke to Ayaka in a bright voice. Ayaka listened with a sharp expression. The waitress reported that someone named Crom Noir had arrived in town and that more tower witches were gathering. Honoka recognized the waitress as the student council vice president from their school. She was also a workshop witch. After finishing their food, they walked to a shopping mall. While Ayaka browsed through a clothing store, Honoka noticed a small girl crying nearby. He went to help her find her family. The girl looked up at him, pulled out a piece of paper, and matched his face against a drawing. She kicked the lost child aside, drew a sword, and lunged at him. She was a tower witch. 2 more appeared behind her and attacked Ayaka together. Ayaka set them ablaze and leapt forward to shield Honoka. One witch pulled a pistol and fired several rounds. Ayaka raised her cape and deflected every bullet. She followed with a burst of flame that knocked all 3 witches to the ground. They scrambled to their feet, fired a rope into the ceiling, and escaped through the roof. Ayaka carried Honoka out of the mall. He apologized for the trouble, but she told him not to worry. She said she would always protect him and reminded him to work hard, because being her apprentice would not be easy. They continued walking until they reached the school. Ayaka told him that the school itself was one of the workshops. She led him through the halls to the headmistress's office. Inside, Kazane waited behind a desk. She scolded Ayaka for the property damage at the mall, then turned to Honoka. She explained that it was custom for witches to introduce their apprentices to the head of the workshop on the first day. She welcomed him and said his training would begin. A few days after his training began, Tanpopo and her group ambushed Honoka and Ayaka on their walk to school. Kana questioned whether attacking Ayaka was wise, but Tampopo ordered a rapid stream formation, sending all of them charging forward at once. Ayaka told Honoka to watch closely. She swung her broom and launched every one of them into the sky. The fight ended in seconds. At school, Honoka opened his locker. A pile of paper spilled out and buried his feet. Every letter was a death threat. Someone had even tucked a voodoo doll inside. Ayaka glanced at the pile and said it was the work of her fan club. She told him not to worry about it. Still, hateful stares followed him through every hallway. He sat beside her in class, where she handed him a tall stack of books and told him this was the start of his studies. During gym, the instructor paired them together for tennis. Ayaka returned every shot with precision. Honoka missed each of his. By the end, he could barely stand. She walked over, pressed close, and adjusted his grip on the racket, showing him the correct form. After school, Ayaka walked with him to the bus station. She said he looked tired and that they would skip practice for the day. They boarded the bus and sat together. Partway through the ride, Ayaka noticed a small magical fish drifting through the air near her face. She looked up at the destination display. The next stop had changed to read Dead End. She stood and turned around. The seats behind them were empty. The driver was gone. The bus moved on its own. A woman sat in the back row. She introduced herself as Cronoir, a tower witch. Ayaka prepared a fire spell, but Cronoir used her magic to freeze Ayaka's movement. She then struck Ayaka with a powerful attack. Not a single mark appeared on Ayaka's body. Honoka stepped in front of Ayaka to shield her. Cronoir walked past him and drove a blade into his stomach. He dropped to his knees, but the pain faded almost instantly. His body showed no wound at all. Behind him, Ayaka collapsed. Blood spread across her clothes in the same spot where he had been stabbed. Cronoir explained. Ayaka had placed a damage transfer spell on herself. Any injury dealt to Honoka would appear on her body instead. This was part of a contract between them. In exchange for using the power sealed inside Honoka, Ayaka became nearly invincible, but she had to bear all harm directed at him. Cronoir told Honoka that if he wanted to save Ayaka, he needed to release more of his inner power. She held out a dark orb and told him to swallow it. She pressed the orb toward his mouth. Green flames erupted between them. Ayaka had forced herself upright and knocked Cronoir back. Ayaka told Honoka to close his eyes and keep his thoughts on her. Green roots spread across her skin. Her body changed. Her flames turned green, and she took on a different, more powerful form. She struck Cronoir hard, piercing through her barrier and hitting her throat. Cronoir staggered and retreated from the bus, promising to return. Honoka woke at a bus stop with Ayaka unconscious beside him. Her wounds had healed, but she would not open her eyes. He carried her to the hospital. The nurse said she was only exhausted and would wake soon. Back at home, Honoka found the dark orb wrapped inside his pocket. Cronoir had slipped it in during the struggle. He placed it inside his desk drawer and hid it. He also thought about what Cronoir had said. If Ayaka signed a contract with him, it meant they might have known each other before meeting at school. Days later, Ayaka reserved the gymnasium for training. She gave Honoka a witch robe and cape, then told him to jump as high as he could. He pushed off the floor and shot upward, nearly reaching the ceiling. The robe made his body light as a feather. On his way down, Ayaka caught him. She asked him to lift her the same way. He did, and she weighed almost nothing in his arms. Ayaka held out her hand and twisted her wrist. A broomstick appeared from inside her cape. She told them that brooms were stored within the capes and could be summoned with that gesture. Honoka tried the same motion. Nothing happened. Before they could continue, students filed into the gym for their own practice. Honoka panicked, but nobody looked their way. Ayaka told him the robes carried a charm that made them invisible to ordinary people. They walked outside. Ayaka grabbed him and lifted off on her broom. High above the school, she explained that workshop witches patrolled their sectors from the air. 5 strong witches rotated shifts at their school alone. They flew across the city, circling towers and gliding over rooftops. The evening sky stretched orange and pink ahead of them. Honoka fell asleep on the broom. When he woke, he spotted a group of older kids surrounding a younger girl below. They were pushing her around and taking her things. He told Ayaka they should help. She refused. Witches protected the town from other witches, not from ordinary disputes. Their existence had to remain secret. Honoka summoned his broom. This time, it appeared. He jumped from the sky. The broom wobbled beneath him. Wind tore past his face. He could not steer properly, but he managed to crash directly into the group of bullies, knocking them down. They pinned him to the ground and raised their fists. Ayaka landed behind them and released a wall of fire that engulfed them all. Honoka asked why she attacked civilians. She told him they were tower witches, which was why they could see him through the robe's charm. The girl they had been targeting was a friend of Honoka's younger sister Kasumi. She was not a witch, so she had seen none of the magic around her, but Ayaka had taken him out the previous weekend without saying anything. Tampopo and a group sat together at a restaurant, trying to figure out how to capture Honoka and defeat Ayaka. Every plan they had tried so far had failed. Rin suggested they stop attacking Ayaka directly and instead wait for a moment when Honoka was alone. The others agreed. Before they could leave, Cronoir walked in and offered to join their effort. She told them the secret behind Ayaka's strength. As long as Ayaka stayed close to Honoka, her magic remained powerful. Separating the two of them was the only way to weaken her. The next morning, Honoka came downstairs to get ready for school. His sister Kasumi greeted him and helped fix his messy hair with a comb and hairdryer. While working on his hair, she asked about a phone call he received from a girl over the weekend. He made up an excuse about a class calling system. Kasumi pressed harder. She told him she attended the same school and heard the rumors. Other students bullied her because her brother spent all his time with the most popular girl in their class. She asked what kind of relationship he had with Ayaka. Before he could answer, their mother Komachi called them for breakfast. After eating, Honoka remembered he needed to meet Ayaka early. He rushed out the door and ran toward the bus stop. A rope stretched across the sidewalk caught his foot. He fell forward and hit the ground. Tampopo stood over him with two rabbit soldiers at her sides. They pinned him down. Tampopo told him that her friends were already fighting Ayaka somewhere else. With the two of them separated, Ayaka would grow weaker. At the bus stop, three witches from Tampopo's group had cornered Ayaka. Mei told her they had figured out her weakness and planned to finish her for good. She drew her whip, and all three attacked at once. Back where Honoka lay restrained, two of Tampopo's rabbit soldiers suddenly flew into the air. A shadow spread across the street. Tampopo looked up. A massive teddy bear towered over the buildings, holding the crushed soldiers in its paws. Kasumi stood on the bear's shoulder, controlling it with her hands. She was a workshop witch. She had come to rescue her brother. Tampopo grew furious. She summoned a giant rabbit soldier to match the bear's size. The two titans crashed into each other in the middle of the street. The bear shoved the rabbit backward and knocked it to the ground. The rabbit looked up with wide, pitiful eyes. When the bear hesitated, the rabbit jabbed its fingers into the bear's eyes. The bear stumbled back. The rabbit charged forward. The bear dodged and grabbed it, trying to slam it into the pavement. It spun the rabbit around by the arms and hurled it into the transmission lines. The wires bent and sparked. The rabbit bounced off and flew back. The bear swung a kick but missed. The rabbit struck the bear in the neck, then sprayed green mist into its face. Using the transmission lines like ropes, the rabbit launched itself forward with a heavy blow. The bear answered with a punch that sent the rabbit tumbling across the ground. Before the bear could finish, a skeletal dinosaur slammed into its back. Rin had arrived with her own creature. The bear stumbled but kept its footing. Now the rabbit and the dinosaur circled together, 2 against 1. Kasumi narrowed her eyes. The teddy bear began to grow. It rose higher and higher until its head reached into the clouds. She brought its foot down on both creatures at once. The impact sent a shockwave through the streets. Buildings crumbled. Windows shattered for blocks in every direction. Tampopo and Rin survived. Their creatures carried them away from the rubble. Kasumi climbed down from the bear and walked over to Honoka, who sat on the ground where he had watched the entire fight. He asked her what just happened. She told him she had been protecting him for years whenever Ayaka was not around. Honoka grabbed her hands and said they needed to go save Ayaka. Kasumi pointed upward. Ayaka sat calmly on the bear's open paw, reading a book. She had already dealt with the witches who ambushed her. Ayaka climbed down. Honoka ran to her and thanked her for being safe. Kasumi crossed her arms. She reminded him that she was the one who actually saved him. She then turned to Ayaka and said they had an agreement. Kasumi protected Honoka at home, on holidays, and on weekends. Ayaka handled the bus and the school. Honoka listened to them argue over who was responsible for him. He realized that everything Kasumi had said that morning about not knowing Ayaka and getting bullied had been a lie. She admitted she was just teasing him. Kasumi's tone changed. She told Ayaka that the headmistress had counted over 30 tower witches now gathered in town. None of them had made a move yet. Something large was building. Ayaka nodded and said that perhaps she should start protecting Honoka around the clock. She suggested they move in together. Across town, Cronoir gave orders to her crocodile familiar. She wanted every tower witch in the city captured and brought to her base. At the school, Principal Kazane turned on the television in her office. The news showed half the city in ruins from the giant battle. She stared at the screen. A phone rang on her desk. She picked it up. The caller was from Rothenburg. Medusa, the second most powerful witch alive, had broken free from a prison that held her for several decades. Kazane set the phone down slowly. The following day, Ayaka visited Honoka's home to ask his mother for permission to keep him by her side at all times. and sat them down. She told them a story from her high school years. She had been close friends with a powerful girl known by the title Dragon Tooth. That girl was Kazan, Ayaka's mother and the current school headmistress. The two women had grown so close they wanted to marry each other, but the times would not allow it. They married different men instead and made a promise that their children would be joined together. Ayaka and Honoka had been engaged before either of them was born. Kasumi overheard everything. She refused to let her brother leave. Komachi told her she needed to grow up. When Kasumi kept protesting, Komachi pinned her to the floor and told Honoka to pack his things and go. Outside the house, Ayaka asked Honoka if he was comfortable living with her. He said there was nothing he wanted more and added that something about being near her felt familiar, almost like a memory he could not reach. Ayaka told him she felt the same way. Her own memories were hazy, but she was certain they had known each other long before meeting at school. She believed someone with great power had erased their shared past. Still, one thing remained clear in her mind. Her mission was to protect him, and that had never changed. A black car pulled up to the curb. A driver stepped out and opened the door. They rode through the city until the car stopped in front of a towering building, over 40 stories tall. Maids lined the entrance hall and bowed as they walked inside. Ayaka led him to the elevator and pressed the button for one of the upper floors. The doors opened onto a wide hallway. 3 maids stood near the entrance to Ayaka's room. All 3 had been turned to gray stone. Behind them, a woman sat waiting. She introduced herself as Medusa and said she had grown tired of waiting for them to arrive. Ayaka pushed Honoka back into the elevator. She told him to go down to the 12th floor and stay there. The doors closed between them. She changed into her battle form and launched herself at Medusa. A massive serpent blocked her path and threw her backward. She charged again. The snake struck her aside. Honoka stood inside the elevator. He remembered that Ayaka always told him to stay close. If he moved too far away, her invincibility would weaken. He decided to stay. The elevator doors began to melt. Metal dripped to the floor, and the opening burst apart. Ayaka lay on the ground beyond it, injured. She told him to summon his broom and run. A high sound filled the air. A girl nearby played a flute. The melody carried a curse. Stone crept up Ayaka's legs and across her body. Her skin turned gray. Her eyes went still. Honoka begged Medusa to release her. He offered himself instead. Medusa refused. She explained that their souls were linked. If Ayaka died, he would die with her, leaving Ayaka as stone suited her purposes well enough. Honoka reached into his pocket. The dark orb Cronoir had slipped him sat in his palm. He had carried it with him when they moved. He placed it in his mouth and swallowed. White light filled the room. A woman appeared before him. She had pale hair and a calm, cold face. She called herself the White Princess Evermillion. 2 of Medusa's creatures rushed at her. Light shot from her hands and cut them apart. Medusa flew forward. Evermillion raised her palm and released a blast so powerful it tore through the walls and shattered the building's upper floors. Across the city, Kazane stood at her office window. She saw the top of the building explode in a column of light. She immediately called her assistant and ordered every workshop witch in the city to assemble. Inside the crumbling room, Evermillion told Honoka the truth. Ayaka turned to stone because his belief in her had wavered. Medusa's hands and eyes were still partially sealed, so her curse only worked when the bond between Honoka and Ayaka weakened. To break the stone, he needed to reignite that bond. He needed to kiss her. Evermillion began to fade. She told him his first seal had broken and warned him not to call on her too often. Then she was gone. Medusa rose through the wreckage. Tanpopo and her group arrived beside her. Honoka pressed his lips to Ayaka's stone face. Warmth spread from the point of contact. Cracks split across the gray surface. Color returned to her skin. Her eyes opened. Ayaka stood and turned toward Tanpopo's group. A single burst of flame sent all of them flying. She rose into the air to meet Medusa. Fire and serpents clashed above the ruined building. Sparks scattered across the night sky. Stone crept along Ayaka's arm during the fight. She flexed her hand and the stone shattered. Their serpents collided one final time. Medusa's creature broke apart. Ayaka forced her down. Honoka grew exhausted during the battle. His body went limp and he fell asleep midair, still clinging to Ayaka. He woke later that night in the school nurse's office. Ayaka sat in a chair beside his bed. He asked if everything had been real. She pulled back the curtain behind her. Medusa and her students lay resting on the beds next door. Ayaka told him she would explain later, but they would not be enemies anymore. She drew the curtain shut, leaned forward, and kissed his cheek. She said she was returning the favor. Then she told him quietly to never trade his life for hers again. They left the school together. Ayaka's building lay in ruins across the city, so they walked back to Honoka's house instead. Kasumi had already gone out to answer Kazane's emergency summon. Komachi opened the front door and saw the 2 of them standing on the step. Her face lit up. She welcomed them both inside, searching for Medusa without success. The next morning, Kasumi returned home. After spending the night, she walked upstairs to check on Honoka and found Ayaka sitting close to him, examining the seal on his body. Kasumi's face went red. At the breakfast table, she learned their mother had let Ayaka stay the night. She raised her voice at Komachi and spoke rudely. Honoka scolded her and told her to apologize, but Komachi had already gone quiet. She rolled into her bed and would not speak to anyone. Honoka called her workplace, told them she was sick, and left for school early. At the school, the student council held a meeting. The president, Mio, paced back and forth. 2 weeks had passed since Honoka started appearing beside Ayaka everywhere, and nobody had done anything about it. The vice president refused to act and reminded her that Ayaka had warned everyone not to touch Honoka. Mio turned to the council's advisor, a science teacher named Kyoichiro. She told him that if he did not deal with Honoka, she and the council would have him removed from his position. Later that morning, Kyoichiro approached Honoka and Ayaka in the hallway. He said he needed to speak with them and led them to the science laboratory. Inside, he told Honoka that his presence had become a problem. He explained that at the Fall Culture Festival each year, students voted for the most outstanding person in the school. The winner earned the title of prince or princess. Ayaka held that title. Candidates were chosen based on looks, grades, athletics, and charisma. The tradition came from an old legend about an angel who once attended classes among ordinary students. Because of this, the princess held more authority than the student council, the teachers, and everyone except the headmistress. As the headmistress's daughter, Ayaka already occupied 2 of the highest positions. Nobody could tell her what to do. Kyoichiro said the real issue was that rumors about Honoka and Ayaka were spreading, and the council blamed him. Ayaka told Honoka not to worry. She said she had a plan and they just needed to move faster. Kyoichiro said he was glad to hear it. Then he told them he had called them there for a different reason. He pulled out a small green device. It flashed. The room dissolved. Honoka opened his eyes inside a strange, empty dimension. Only Kyoichiro stood with him. Ayaka was gone. Kyoichiro said she was safe in the real world. He held up a small orb that looked like the dark candy Crow Noir had once given Honoka. He called it a lesser copy. He knew Honoka had swallowed the original to summon Evermillion. 5 seals held Evermillion imprisoned inside Honoka's body, Kyoichiro explained. The candy had broken one of them. The remaining seals would weaken over time until they all collapsed. Once free, Evermillion would come for Kazan, the person who had sealed her away decades ago. On top of that, Kyoichiro already knew Ayaka was hiding Medusa from her mother. Right now, Kazan was too busy dealing with the Medusa situation to notice the broken seal. But it was only a matter of time. The workshop headquarters had entrusted Honoka to Kazan because of her strength, under the condition that the seals stayed intact. Now that condition was broken, Kyoichiro offered to become Honoka's guardian instead of Ayaka. He said he only wanted to help. Honoka refused. The dimension cracked open. Iron bars punched through the barrier. Ayaka tore into the space and drove Kyoichiro into the ground. She pulled Honoka out. Behind them, a wooden puppet lay where Kyoichiro had been. He had already escaped using a substitution technique. Ayaka brought Honoka to the announcement room. She told him to call every student to the gymnasium. His voice echoed through the speakers. Students filed into the large hall and filled the bleachers. Ayaka walked onto the stage. She declared that she was removing Mio from the position of student council president. She pointed to Honoka and named him the new president. She appointed herself as his vice president. The former vice president moved down 1 rank. Honoka stood before the council members afterward and gave a short introduction. He told them he knew nobody accepted him yet. He said he would work to earn their trust over time. After school, Honoka and Ayaka walked into a toy shop together. Honoka stepped outside alone for a moment. A giant teddy bear dropped from above, scooped him up, and ran. A car flew through the shop window and crashed into the building. Tranquilizer needles hit Ayaka's body. She collapsed. Kasumi sat on the bear's shoulder. She told Honoka she was taking him away. The bear spread paper wings she had built from parts of their house. They lifted into the air. Kasumi said she had overheard everything Kyoichiro told him. Soon the headmistress would turn against him, and Ayaka might follow. She planned to hide him deep in the woods where nobody could find them. A shadow fell over the paper plane. A tree dragon rose behind them. Ayaka sat on its back. Fire rained down from above. Kasumi swerved. Blasts struck buildings below. Streets cracked apart. The plane clipped a rooftop and crashed into a building. Everyone tumbled through the air. Ayaka dove and caught them before they hit the ground. She carried them all home and put them to sleep. Late that night, Honoka woke up and found Ayaka sitting nearby. He apologized for Kasumi's behavior. Ayaka said she did not mind. She said Kasumi only threw a car at her and used some tranquilizers. She even admired how protective Kasumi was. She asked Honoka if she should try acting like a little sister too. He laughed and said she would be more like an older sister. They talked back and forth for a while, trying out different versions of the idea. Eventually, Ayaka grew tired and fell asleep. Honoka let her rest in his bed. He looked at the shopping bags by the door. The stuffed animals he had bought for Ayaka Ayaka and Kasumi were torn apart from the chase. He sat quietly in the dim room. Downstairs, Kamachi's phone buzzed. Kazana's voice came through. She said she was coming over to speak with Ayaka and her son. The next morning, Kazan left early with Kamachi and Kasumi to go shopping. Ayaka woke before Honoka and moved to the kitchen. She tied on an apron and started cooking breakfast. When Honoka came downstairs, the smell of warm food filled the room. He sat across from her at the table, and they ate together. Upstairs, Tanpopo and her group huddled near the doorway. They had been staying at the house along with Medusa, kept close under Ayaka's watch. The girls asked Medusa why they had to obey Ayaka. Medusa told them they lost the fight fairly, and the rules demanded obedience to the winner. She said their goals still aligned, so there was no reason to act yet. But if they wanted to try capturing Honoka on their own, they could attempt it whenever Ayaka stepped away. The girls had crept upstairs the night before and waited outside his room. Ayaka never left his side. She stayed awake through the entire night and then went straight to the kitchen. She did not seem to need sleep the way ordinary people did. After breakfast, rain started falling outside. Honoka and Ayaka hurried to bring the laundry in from the line. Water soaked through their clothes. Soon after, Kazane and the others returned from their outing. Ayaka went to greet them at the door. Honoka headed to the bathroom to dry off. He opened the door and found Tanpopo's group already inside. They grabbed him and dragged him out into the main hallway, calling him an intruder. Everyone stood in the front room now. Kazane looked at the tower witches. She put Kamachi and Kasumi to sleep with a quick spell. Then, she turned to Ayaka and said she would capture every one of them and make them reveal where Medusa was hiding. Both Kazane and Ayaka summoned their brooms. Instead of stepping aside, Ayaka swung around and clashed against her mother. She said she could not allow any of them to be taken. Kazan told Honoka to order Ayaka to stop. She said this behavior had gone too far. Honoka thought back to what Kyoichiro had told him. Ayaka was hiding Medusa and the tower witches from her mother to protect a secret. If Kazane captured them, she would learn the truth about the broken seal. He made his choice. He told Ayaka to protect them no matter what. Ayaka called out to Medusa. She said it was time to honor their agreement. Medusa stepped forward and bit into Ayaka's shoulder. Scales spread across Ayaka's skin. The two of them merged. Honoka's vision went dark for a moment. Images moved behind his closed eyes. He saw what had happened after Ayaka defeated Medusa at the tower building. Ayaka had spared her life and offered a deal. If Medusa fused with her, Ayaka would gain enough strength to fight Kazane when the time came. In return, Medusa would pass her powers to Ayaka as her successor. Ayaka promised to shelter Medusa and her students until the moment arrived. The vision faded. Honoka opened his eyes. Kazane stood across the room, broomstick raised. She believed Medusa had brainwashed her daughter and was trying to make Ayaka her vessel. Medusa laughed at her and called her confused. Kazane struck first. Her broom came down hard. Ayaka blocked it and turned her gaze toward her mother. Stone crept across Kazane's face and body. She grabbed Ayaka by the collar and shoved her to the ground before the stone finished spreading. For a moment, Kazane stood completely frozen as a gray statue. Ayaka rose and turned to walk away. A crack split the stone from within. Kazane broke free through sheer force. She appeared behind Ayaka and kicked her forward. Ayaka stumbled and gasped for air. Kazan told her that her invincibility had vanished. Evermillion rejected impurity, and fusing with Medusa had severed that protection. Ayaka was weaker now than she had been in a long time. Kazane raised her fist. Honoka felt something shift inside his body. In an instant, he appeared where Ayaka had been standing. Kazane's punch connected with his face. His jaw cracked sideways, and everything went black. He woke inside a cold room. Iron bars lined the walls. Chains hung from his wrists. Ayaka sat beside him, also restrained. She told him they were in one of her mother's punishment chambers. The fusion with Medusa had already been undone. She tried burning through the bars, but the metal held firm. Ayaka said this was the worst outcome. Medusa would be interrogated and their secret would be exposed. She explained that Kazane had once warned her never to let the seals on Honoka break. As long as the seals stayed intact, Kazane guaranteed their protection. Now that one seal was broken, Honoka had become a threat in her mother's eyes. She broke his chains loose. When he asked why she had gone so far to protect the tower witches, she told him the truth plainly. If her mother captured them, they would be forced to reveal everything about Medusa and the broken seal. Allying with Medusa was the only way to keep his secret safe and gain enough power to face Kazan. Honoka asked if she had any plan left. Ayaka said they needed to defeat her mother. Kazan respected strength. If they won, she would join their side. Meanwhile, Kazane sat in her office with Cronoir across the table. She had looked forward to interrogating Medusa, but a pair of workshop witches from Rothenburg had arrived with official orders from headquarters. They took Medusa into custody and left. Kazan was not allowed to question her at all. She gripped her teacup tightly. The floor shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The wall behind her split apart. She flew outside on her broom and looked down. Ayaka and Honoka stood on top of the rubble where the prison chamber had been. Smoke rose around them. Ayaka raised her weapon toward her mother. Kazane shouted down at them. She asked how many buildings Ayaka planned to destroy. She told them both to put on their uniforms and go home. They would come back the next day to help clean every piece of the mess. Honoka and Ayaka walked home through the quiet streets. The air smelled like dust and burnt stone. Kazane had not discovered the truth about the seals. The secret held for now. A few years earlier, Kazane had brought two girls to meet her daughter. Their names were Kanaya and Tuko. She told them to watch over Ayaka and stay close to her at school. From Ayaka's first day, the other students stared at her. During gym class, she hit a ball so hard it cracked against the far wall. Girls crowded around her between classes, but Ayaka barely spoke. Her face stayed blank. She answered questions with short words and walked through the halls without looking at anyone. Kanaya and Tuko sometimes wondered if she had lost her memories or arrived from somewhere far away. One afternoon, a group of older girls cornered Ayaka near the stairwell. One of them held up a pair of scissors and reached for her hair. Ayaka caught the girl's wrist and knocked the scissors out of her hand. The air around them grew hot. The girls' faces turned red. Their legs buckled and they dropped to the floor, unconscious. Ayaka stepped over them and kept walking. Over that first year, Kanai and Tuko grew closer to her. They taught her small things about talking to people and spending time together. They watched her earn the highest marks in every subject and win every athletic event she entered. Their admiration deepened. Other students followed. A group formed around her, and by the Fall Culture Festival, the school voted her their princess. Through all of it, Ayaka searched. She visited boys-only schools across the city. She stood outside their gates until sunset, watching the students leave. She crossed each school off a handwritten list. Weeks passed. The list grew shorter. She began to believe she would never find the person she was looking for. Then, one afternoon in spring, she spotted him walking down a sidewalk. A younger girl held his arm. Ayaka ran toward them. When she reached him, she saw his face up close. He did not recognize her. He had no memory of who she was. The girl beside him was his sister, Kasumi. Ayaka went to her mother that night and told her she had found the one she was meant to protect. Honoka opened his eyes in the morning. Pieces of the memory hung in his mind like fog. He thought it was only a dream. He rolled out of bed and walked to the kitchen. The dining table was full. Tampopo and her group sat in every chair, eating from bowls and plates. Kazane had released them after capturing Medusa, and with nowhere else to go, they'd settled into the house. Kasumi stood in the doorway with her mouth open. She marched upstairs to wake Honoka and found Ayaka already in his room, leaning over him in a nurse outfit. Ayaka said she was checking the condition of his seals. Kasumi's face went tight. They all walked to school together after breakfast. Honoka opened his locker. Letters poured out and scattered across the floor. Every one of them demanded he resign from the student council. In class, his answers came out wrong. The teacher moved on without waiting for him to correct himself. During lunch, the sound of breaking glass echoed down the hallway. Honoka and Ayaka rushed toward the noise. Students ran through the corridors on bicycles. Others smashed windows and flipped desks. The whole building had fallen into disorder. Ayaka told him it looked like a rebellion against his position as council president. A tall girl shoved Tuko to the ground in front of them. She handed Honoka a folded letter. It told him to come to the gymnasium alone at 2:30. Her name was Renon. Tuko explained what she had seen the night before. The former president Mio had met Renon at a bar and told her that Honoka had stolen her position by force. The lie made Renon furious. Ayaka pulled Tuko aside and told her to meet after school. During gym class, Ayaka explained who Renon was. She served as one of 5 witches assigned to patrol and protect the school. She had earned her reputation after strangling an escaped tiger with her bare hands. She had been suspended 2 months ago for causing problems. The headmistress was out of town and had left Cronoir in charge for the day. No one would stop the chaos. At 2:30, Honoka walked into the gymnasium alone. The floor had been cleared into an open ring. Students packed the bleachers on every side. Their voices bounced off the high ceiling. Renon stood in the center. She accused him of disgracing her friend and seizing power. She swung her fist into his face. His head snapped sideways and he hit the floor. The crowd roared. He stood back up. She hit him again. Left, right, left. His knees buckled. She grabbed his tie and pulled him close. Her signature punch wound back. Honoka shifted his weight. This was the moment Ayaka had told him about. He gathered the small amount of power inside him, pushed forward, and shoved Renon to the ground. He raised his fist over her, then he lowered it. He could not bring himself to strike. The gymnasium went dark. Feet landed softly on the floor around them. Tanpopo and her group dropped from the ceiling and rushed Renon. She knocked each of them aside with single punches. Then, a fist wrapped in flame connected with her jaw. Ayaka stood behind her. Renon fell. The tower witches lifted Honoka's body into a victory pose. Their concealment robes hid them from sight. The lights came back on. The students saw only Honoka standing over Renon's fallen form. The gymnasium erupted. The next day, Honoka learned the full truth. Ayaka had planned everything a week in advance. She struck a deal with Mio. If Mio helped make Honoka popular, she would be allowed allowed back into the student council. Mio had pushed Rinon's anger further than intended, but the result held. The students who once filled his locker with threats now stepped aside when he walked down the hall. They watched him pass with quiet respect. A few days after the rebellion at school, Ayaka brought Honoka to the top of a tall building. Wind pushed at their clothes. The city spread out far below them. She told him she would finally teach him to fight with his magic. Honoka asked why she changed her mind, since she had always refused before. Ayaka said she knew he had been training on his own and keeping secrets from her. She did not like that. She held her palm forward. Fire rose from the concrete and twisted into the shape of a beast. It stood on 4 legs, with bright orange flames rolling off its back. She told Honoka to summon his own familiar to fight against it. He stared at her. The beast opened its mouth, and a stream of fire knocked him flat on his back. He scrambled up. The creature lunged again. Its tail whipped across his arm and tore the skin at his elbow. Blood ran down to his wrist. Ayaka stopped everything. She rushed to his side and checked the wound. Honoka pushed her hand away. He told her to stop going easy on him. He needed her to be tough so he could actually learn. Ayaka looked at him for a long moment. Then she picked him up, walked to the edge of the roof, and threw him off the building. The ground rushed up at him. Wind roared past his ears. The fire familiar dove after him, snapping flames at his legs. Ayaka followed on her broom, gliding beside him. She told him to summon a familiar that could fly, or he would hit the street below. Honoka squeezed his eyes shut. He tried to focus on the thing most important to him. An image of Ayaka filled his mind. Just before he struck the ground, light burst from his body. A massive figure took shape in the air around him. It was a giant replica of Ayaka, towering over the nearby buildings. The giant swung its fist and punched straight through the wall of the building beside them. Inside the broken room, Kyoichiro sat at a small table across from Cronoir, teacups still steaming. Cronoir looked up at the hole in the wall. She said the kind of power could only come from breaking the second seal. She asked where Kazane had gone, since she had been left in charge and found things dull without her. Honoka collapsed. All his magic had drained out at once. Ayaka caught him and carried him home on her broom. Meanwhile, Kazane stood inside a dark underground passage. Old stone walls rose on both sides. A circle of strange symbols covered the floor, carved deep into the rock. Rinon appeared behind her. She said a witch, calling herself the messenger of the tower, had come to them with a threat aimed at the entire city. 1 week later, Honoka and Ayaka walked to school for their exams. In that same underground chamber, Kazan met the witch face to face. Her name was Weekend. Kazan told her she already knew about the bombs planted across the city and guessed Weekend wanted to trade Honoka's capture for the city's safety. Weekend shook her head. She was not there to negotiate. Weekend explained how the protective barrier worked. Kazane's magic covered every person in the city. Whenever someone suffered harm, a piece of Kazane's power absorbed the damage. Her enormous reserves and fast recovery let her maintain this shield permanently. But Weekend asked what would happen if every person in the city took damage at the same instant. Even Kazane's pool would empty. Weekend pulled out a small clock. She pressed it. Ancient rune bombs buried throughout the city detonated all at once. The ground shook. Fire and dust erupted from streets, parks, and buildings. Glass shattered across entire blocks, but no one bled, no one burned. Kazane's barrier caught every single explosion. Her body buckled. Her magic drained to nothing. She dropped to the floor, unconscious. Weekend smiled. She revealed she had been the one who lured Medusa and Cronoir to the city in the first place. All of it served one purpose: remove Kazane. Her companions lifted the unconscious headmistress and carried her to a cell. Weekend said it would take at least a week for Kazane's magic to refill. Plenty of time. Back at the school, the floor cracked open during exams. Walls of flame shot up through the gaps. Papers turned to ash in the air. Ayaka grabbed Honoka and ran. She led him through hallways and down hidden stairs into the underground workshop beneath the school. Kasumi waited at the bottom. She threw her arms around her brother. Toko stood nearby alongside Rinon and several other patrol witches. Their leader, Natsume, sat in a chair near the entrance. Honoka asked what was happening. Before anyone answered, Natsume drew a gun and fired a sleeping round into Honoka. The bullet's effect transferred through the damage link. Ayaka's eyes rolled shut and she fell. Kasumi moved to shield them both. Rinon struck her once and she crumpled. Rinon told Honoka they needed to seal him away until they understood what the enemy wanted and where Kazane was being held. He followed them down ancient stone steps into a deep cell. They set Ayaka beside him on the cold floor. The ceiling rose high above, open at the top to let air circulate. Honoka tried summoning his broom. Nothing happened. His magic would not respond. Ayaka stirred and opened her eyes. She told him they could not use any magic right now. With the city in ruins and Kazane's barrier depleted, the The entire magical infrastructure had gone dark. She said her mother must have been defeated. A small toy dropped through the opening in the ceiling. It hit the stone floor, rolled once, and projected a glowing image into the air. Weekend's face appeared in the hologram. She said she had found him at last and would be coming to collect him soon. Ayaka stared at the projection for 1 second. Then she crushed the toy under her foot. The explosion blew a hole through the wall behind them. Dust and rubble scattered across the floor. Cool air poured through the gap. Ayaka told Honoka they would escape through the opening and find a way to stop Weekend, but she warned him again. Could use a single spell. Ayaka and Honoka climbed a long staircase out of the underground cell. The steps went on for nearly 2 hours. When they finally stepped outside, they stood on a mountainside overlooking the city. Smoke rose from every direction. Buildings lay cracked open. Streets glowed orange where fire still burned. The air smelled like ash and hot stone. Honoka dropped to his knees. He said his mother and everyone else must be dead because the enemy wanted him. His voice cracked. Ayaka stood beside him, her face calm. She told him no one had died. She explained an old custom. When a workshop was first built, its head formed a contract with the heart of the city. That contract created a barrier around all non-witches. Whenever magic caused harm to ordinary people, the city drew on the contractor's power to protect them. Kazane's barrier had absorbed every explosion, but now Kazane was captured and her magic was spent. Without a contractor, the city could not repair itself, and no workshop witch could use any spells. Ayaka told Honoka they needed to reach the center of the city. He would form a new contract and restore the barrier so the witches could fight back. Down in the underground workshop beneath the school, Natsume and the other patrol witches gathered what information they had. All civilians had been moved to safe locations and put to sleep. The headmistress remained in enemy hands. No workshop witch could access her magic. Help from headquarters was still days away. Many witches were unaccounted for after the blasts. A door banged open. One of the missing witches stumbled inside. Straps of wire and metal wrapped her chest. Time bombs. She said Weekend had captured several workshop witches and fitted them all with explosives. Weekend's demand was simple. Hand over Honoka within 30 minutes or the bombs would go off. On a rooftop near the school grounds, Kasumi crouched beside Tanpopo and her group. Below them, Weekend stood in the open with the bomb-strapped witches arranged around her. Tanpopo asked what they should do. Kasumi told them they were the only witches who could still use magic, since tower witches drew power from a different source. She intended to put them to work. In a separate part of the city, Cronoir woke in her room. The view from her window showed nothing but fire and rubble. Her companion explained that a witch named Weekend had done this, the same person who had fed them information about Honoka in the first place. Cronoir said anyone strong enough to defeat Kazane was worth confronting. She set out to find Weekend's allies. Deep underground, Ayaka and Honoka walked through a narrow tunnel. Water dripped from the low ceiling. The stone walls felt cool and damp. A figure stepped out of the shadows ahead of them. She called herself Gibraltar. Rock rose from the ground around her and shaped itself into a massive golem. The creature swung its arms down and smashed both of them into the wet stone floor. It grabbed Ayaka and lifted her high, ready to crush her. Ayaka twisted free. She dropped to the ground and drove her knees straight into Gibraltar's face. The stone armor cracked. Gibraltar staggered. Ayaka followed with more strikes. Each punch landed clean and hard. The golem crumbled into rubble. Gibraltar collapsed beside the loose stones. Ayaka had no magic, but her mother had made her train in martial arts for years. Her body alone was enough. They kept walking. The tunnel opened into a wide cavern. A massive tree grew from the center of a shallow pool. Its roots spread across the stone floor and reached into the dark water. Ayaka told Honoka this was the sacred ground where all the workshop's magic originated. He needed to step forward and form the contract. Back at the school, Natsume tried to defuse the bombs by hand. The timer showed 18 minutes. It was not enough. The witches decided to confront Weekend directly. They walked out to meet her. Weekend told them she was actually quite weak, but even if they defeated her, they could not stop the bombs. The real detonation controls were elsewhere. Kasumi heard those words from her position above. She realized Weekend was only a negotiator. Someone else held the trigger. She rushed inside the building to find that person. Honoka waded into the shallow water around a great tree. Vines curled up from beneath the surface and wound around his arms and legs. Light spread through the roots. The countdown ticked below 5 minutes. At the school, Renon and Natsume sprinted toward Weekend with their fists raised. Warmth flooded back into their bodies. Magic returned to their hands. Honoka had completed the contract. The witches felt the change instantly. They spoke the dispel incantation. One by one, the bombs went dark. Renon's fist connected with Weekend's jaw and drove her into the ground. They dragged her to a sealed cell lined with magic-proof glass. Renon told her sure no spell could break through it. Weekend smiled. She pulled open her coat. Physical grenades hung from an iron vest underneath her clothes. The pins came loose. The blast tore through the cell and threw every witch in the corridor against the walls. Weekend walked out through the smoke, her iron armor blackened but intact. Her companion met her outside and draped a fresh cloak over her shoulders. Weekend activated more bombs across the school grounds. Workshop witches fell in the blast. She called out to Honoka. Her voice carried through the contract link. He could hear her. He could feel every witch who was hurt. He tried to stand, tried to push his power outward to heal them. Light spread from his hands and reached Tampopo's group and the wounded witches nearby. Ayaka watched his face go pale. His legs shook. She stepped forward and struck him in the head. He dropped to the ground, unconscious. She said he was using too much. She told his still body that the rest of this fight belonged to her. Across the city, Kasumi and Tampopo's group found Weekend's companion hiding inside the school. They closed in to fight. On another street, Cron Noir caught Gibraltar and forced her to reveal Weekend's full plan and location. Ayaka carried Honoka to the school nurse's office. She laid him on a bed and pulled a blanket over him. His skin felt hot. A fever had started from the strain of forming the contract with the city. Honoka drifted into sleep. Behind his closed eyes, old scenes played out. He saw his mother as a young girl in a school hallway. Other students pushed her and laughed. She walked with her head down, just like he always did. Then a younger version of Kazane appeared. She grabbed the bullies by their collars and threw them aside. After that, Kazane and Komachi walked home together. They became friends. The scene shifted. Years passed. Honoka was small, maybe 4 or 5. Kazane brought him to her house. A young Ayaka watched him from behind a doorway. Later, Ayaka went to her mother and asked to be placed in the same class as Honoka once they reached middle school. She said she had seen him before, in a vision, and wanted to be near him. The memory broke apart. Honoka found himself standing in a dark, open space. Stars hung everywhere above and below, bright and still. Kyoichiro stood next to him. He told Honoka that the contract with the sacred tree had pulled his sleeping mind into this realm. These were not his own dreams. They were Kazane's memories, stored inside the city's heart. Kyoichiro led him to a lower level. He explained that during times of crisis, all non-witch civilians were moved here. Each star above them held a human life, kept safe and sleeping until the danger passed. Once the city returned to normal, the people would be released. Their memories of the incident would be erased. Honoka asked about the erasing. Kyoichiro told him that the Mikage family had always held this role. He was the one who edited and removed memories to keep the existence of witches hidden from ordinary people. He was the one who had erased the shared memories between Honoka and Ayaka long ago. Back in the waking world, Kasumi fought on a street near the school. Her giant pink bear stood across from a black bear of equal size, controlled by Weekend's companion. The companion's magic could copy an opponent's abilities. The two bears crashed into each other. Fists struck faces. Feet dug into pavement. Buildings cracked from the force. Kasumi's bear landed a hard kick that sent the black one sliding back. It stood up again. They traded more blows. Stone and glass fell around them. During one exchange, a piece of the school building broke loose. A witch tumbled from the upper floor. Kasumi directed her bear to catch the falling girl. That opening cost her. The black bear drove a fist into her bear's side. It stumbled. The black bear raised a scythe, ready to finish the fight. Then, stone crept up its legs. Gray spread across its body. It froze solid and shattered. Medusa stood behind the rubble in human form. She gathered Tanpopo and the others, scolded them for failing to handle such a weak enemy, and ran off with them before the Rothenburg witches could catch up. At the nurse's office, Atori walked in. Ayaka told her about Honoka's fever. Atori reported that Cromwar was hunting down tower witches across the city and had already captured Gibraltar, forcing her to reveal Weekend's location. Ayaka asked Atori to stay beside Honoka. She picked up a borrowed magic sword, summoned her broom, and flew toward the church where Weekend waited. Ayaka burst through the church doors. She charged forward with the blade raised. Weekend snapped her fingers. A bomb went off between them. The blast pushed Ayaka back through the air. Weekend told her she had spent years planting explosives across every corner of the city. She had no extraordinary powers like Kazan or Evermillion. Bombs were her weapon, and the entire church was rigged with them. Ayaka pressed forward again. Explosions erupted left and right. She jumped high with the sword. A blast caught her side and knocked her into a pillar. She got back up. Fire spread along her arms. She ran at Weekend and swung. The blade cut through the air and sliced a lock of Weekend's hair clean off. Weekend realized the sword was a distraction. Ayaka had been using her magic as a shield the whole time. Weekend detonated the ceiling. Stone and wood crashed down. Ayaka dodged through the falling debris. She closed the distance and struck Weekend hard enough to bring her down. But Weekend triggered another charge. The explosion threw Ayaka against the far wall. Massive creatures rose from the floor floor around Weekend, formed from stored magic. They advanced on Ayaka together. Inside the memory realm, a tower witch attacked Honoka and Kyoichiro. Kyoichiro held the invader off and pushed Honoka's consciousness back to the real world. Honoka opened his eyes on the nurse's bed. Eitori stood over him. He tried to get up. She pushed him back down. Then Kyoichiro's voice came through the phone. He told Eitori that Weekend had planted a massive bomb inside the memory realm. If it went off, every civilian stored there would die. Eitori held Honoka to his feet. They moved through the broken streets toward the church. Smoke and dust filled the air. When they arrived, Ayaka lay on the stone floor. Her clothes were torn. Burns marked her arms. Honoka knelt beside her. He told her about the bomb in the memory realm. Everyone would die if Weekend was not stopped. He held out his hand and told her to take his power. Ayaka's fingers closed around his. Flames erupted across her body, green and white and bright. She rose from the floor. The creatures around Weekend did not last a second. Ayaka moved through them and drove Weekend into the ground. She stood over her and demanded the switch to the bomb. Weekend lay flat on her back. A thin smile crossed her face. Her hand moved. The bomb activated. She said it was already too late. Weekend told Ayaka the bomb had already gone off. Inside the memory realm, a magic circle lit up the dark sky. White light spread outward from its center. The explosion moved fast. It tore through the field of stars where human souls floated. One by one, the lights blinked out. Thousands of them, gone. Honoka watched from the church floor. His body shook. His teeth pressed together so hard, his jaw ached. The connection from his contract let him see everything happening inside the realm. Every soul that vanished sent a jolt through his chest. Weekend stood over him. She told him this was his fault. All those people died because of what lived inside him. She told him to break his seal and release his full power. Heat built behind his eyes. White light crawled up his arms. The anger inside him pushed outward. Magic poured from his body in a raw, uncontrolled wave. Ayaka saw what was happening. She ran toward him across the cracked stone floor of the church. Before she could reach him, the light flickered. The magic cut out. Honoka's legs folded and he dropped face first onto the cold ground. He opened his eyes somewhere else. The air smelled like flowers. Soft light came from every direction. Evermillion stood in front of him, arms crossed, her pale hair hanging still in the windless space. She told him he had come back to her again, even after she warned him not to. She already knew what he